So that really kind of put a light bulb on for me, and I was like, I wonder what it would be like doing this with credit cards. So I just called the credit card company, and the first person I called really has no authority, no power to do anything. So I just said, hey, do you have any deals? Do you have any departments I could talk to about balance transfers? But the thing that really gets them is if you say you want to cancel, right? Then they move you to retention, and they immediately think you can't afford it, or that there's someone out there with a better deal. And so they're very easily going to move that interest rate down because there's no collateral against a credit card typically. So that's probably the lowest hanging fruit.
Money can be complicated. Let a nerd help you. We're here to demystify the complex nature of money by getting you answers from financial nerds and whiz kids. Welcome to Ask the Money Nerds, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we answer your most pressing money questions. How in the world can you find money that's rightfully yours and keep it? Or do people lose and leak money unintentionally? Would you rather keep your coffee habit and instead lose budgeting and no longer have to coupon clip and get ahead without giving up quality of life? What habits can you implement to build cash flow, find money, and improve your finances today on Ask the Money Nerds?
I love that enthusiasm and that excitement in your face. I just gave you
that look like we're doing this. We're doing
Let's ready to roll. Okay, so Scott's question. I love Scott's question because when we take and I'll read it here in a minute, but when we take an assessment or an inventory of our habits, our daily habits, whether they're around money or not, we can really decide what we want to hone in on, what's going to help us grow and shape our lives in a different way. So Scott's question today says, what are the best daily money habits or routines to implement for improved productivity and improving cash flow?
Okay, let's do this.
Let's do it.
So look, I remember discovering something that we called the producer power hour. And our definition of producer was to produce more in the world than we consume, right? So you're adding something, you're adding value. And then the power hour was, what if you started your day investing in yourself? You're not investing money, you're investing time. And there was really 3 E's that we started with. A little exercise, right? Get the body in motion. The second E was education. Where can you kind of develop the most important skills, whether those skills around money and cash flow like we're talking about here, or maybe it's emotional intelligence, or maybe it's marketing, or maybe it's speaking skills, but you're reading something that helps you to put your value out there in the world. And then the third thing, and reading or listening or however it might be, and the third E was enlightenment, which was more about a spiritual component, a gratitude component, or a component for space, because there's so much noise in the world. We're just constantly bombarded with things, and I'm noisy, I get it, you know? And if you had this space to actually listen to yourself, to tune into that intuition, right? So that could be just quiet time to think, that could be meditation, that could be prayer. But starting your day this way was like putting on an armor of abundance so that you could show up the best version of who you are. And even though you take an hour, and I don't care if it's an hour, it could be 10 minutes, progress over perfection.
Start somewhere.
Right, then the rest of the day is transformed where you're bringing a better energy to it, where you're living your life with more intention, where you're developing the most important part of who you are, right? And I think purpose, there's a lot of activities around finding it, but I think that starting your day this way is one of the best ways to discover that purpose, because I can't look at someone and tell them what their purpose is.
Right.
But I think that there's flashes in our life, right? Just moments. And if we're too busy doing and not getting any time to understand our being, then we miss out on what's available to us.
Yeah, the power hour is a recognition that who I am is valuable in itself, and that I can, when I invest in myself and I choose myself before I start my day, before I invest in anybody else's vision or mission or anything like that, that I am saying everything that I am and what I come to the table with is important.
Right. So let's put this in terms of money. So if you're doing a daily power hour, whether that's 5 days a week or 7 days a week, you just start your day that way. You can say maybe Monday that when you're doing the education side, you can implement something I call mindful cash management. So mindful cash management begins with the 4 types of expenses. So there's 4 types. The first one is destructive. So anything that leads towards debt, anything that's leading towards addiction, any of the things that you don't have control over or you're borrowing to consume, we want to eliminate those types of expenses. So if you look and you go, I've been paying for this thing for months and I've never used it, and it's something like Microsoft Word, I try to put that on my iPad, but it doesn't work without the internet because they want me to pay monthly. So I'm like, cool, I'll just use my computer instead of my iPad. Really small expense, $6 a month, but that would be an example. Slightly destructive.
And so many companies are moving to the subscription model, which is great and convenient in some ways, but sometimes we forget that we've actually subscribed to a service.
And we're not getting value from it.
And we're not getting value from it. So just taking an assessment of where am I investing money
Right.
on an ongoing basis that's not necessary?
So that's a small way to improve cash flow. The second is our lifestyle expenses. And this is where having that weekly check-in just to say, hey, where's my money going, right? What am I paying for? And is it giving me utility? Do I enjoy it? Like there's certain things that are almost like a must to live, but there's other lifestyle expenses that are kind of our choice. It's luxuries that we enjoy. It's, the things that we spend our money on that we go, hey, that has plenty of utility. We're just making sure that weekly you're not spending more than what comes in. Then the third type of expense is a protective expense. It's anything from building up your liquidity and savings to having insurances that transfer risk to, if you're a business owner, setting up the right corporations, or education is a huge part of your protective expenses because the more knowledgeable you are, the better you can be at managing and mitigating risk, right? Simply, the protective expenses are usually something that's a bit negligent for people because nobody wakes up in the morning excited to address these things. The fourth one is a productive expense. Where can you add $1 in your life and have more than $1 come out the other side? Maybe it's investing in your skills and abilities. Maybe it's investing in marketing. Maybe it's investing in, just simple knowledge that you go, okay, I now know better what to do to monetize who I am and what I'm about and reach more people or more deeply impact the people that I'm reaching.
Yeah.
But by differentiating the four expenses, this isn't about budgeting. It's about mindfulness, right? So if you can pay yourself first, so it's just an automation. Every time you make a deposit in the bank, there's a separate account that has an automatic percentage go. You don't even have to think about it. It just sweeps over there. You're like, cool. Now everything else that's left over is mine to spend how I want. And so this is how we start to manage cash flow. And then you're just looking at, can I eliminate any destructive expenses? Are there any lifestyle expenses that need to be managed and maybe I can wait on because they're not that important and they're taking away from where I want to go? Protective expenses, I need to address that so that my money's not just wiped out with one financial surprise. And then productive expenses, where can you really increase those, right? So this is an important part of cash flow. Now, in all these types of expenses, I think it's important to really look at where can you find money that's rightfully yours, right? And that's the 4 I's.
Yep.
The IRS. Are you tipping the government? Let's stop doing that.
Absolutely.
Interest. Are you overpaying on your interest because you haven't refinanced or restructured your loans or renegotiated your interest rates? Investments. Are there any underperforming investments that could cash out and pay off the loans? Are there any investments that have hidden fees or commissions? And if you can get a little bit of financial detective work to figure that out, you can keep more of your money. And is there a way to protect the downside? And the 4th I is insurance. Are there duplicate coverages? Are there improper structure? Can you raise deductibles so that you just cover the basic things on your own and then have the insurance kick in for the more catastrophic type of events? So this is part of, your power hour is on Mondays. You just look and say, okay, where am I at paying myself first? With the money that's left over, I didn't go out of bounds. I didn't spend more than what was left over, right? Because I just got too excited and bought something. But if we borrow to consume, that leads to debt. That harms cash flow. So part of the money habits could be you could pick a day where you're like, that's my money day for education. So mindful cash management on that day, and you listen to one of these YouTube videos or you pick up one of my books, or something like that, and you're just increasing your education because we aren't born with a money manual. We get money before we've probably ever read anything. And unfortunately, a lot of what we read around money, and look, I've been part of this problem, I'm confessing here, is that a lot of times the people that are teaching us have an agenda of how they make a living. And so it's really hard to give quality advice if it's coming from Wall Street that just wants your money. And that might not be the right thing for you because maybe it's time for you to start a business. Maybe it's time for you to invest in your skill set. And investing into a retirement plan might be problematic because it doesn't help you build cash flow today. It doesn't help you understand how to make more money, or you haven't had financial education on how to keep more of the money that you make. And I think people skip those steps far too often. How do you make more money? Number one. How do you keep more of the money that you make without cutting back? And they go right to, how do I make money on my money?
Yeah.
And it becomes speculative. Well, I should do gold. I should do cryptocurrency. I should do real estate. I should do mutual funds. I should do a stock. And the thing is, before you've really invested in your investor DNA and discovered what type of investor are you, what are good investments for you, what can you do to create economic independence? This is such a huge factor, economic independence. Let's see if you can define it for us.
Economic independence is when you have more money coming in than expenses, right?
But that money's coming in on a regular basis from assets.
Yeah.
Or from businesses that don't require your every single day involvement. It doesn't mean that you just set it and forget it and it always works out.
Right. A lot of people will say, I want to learn how to get passive income. Would you differentiate the two? Like, economic independence and having reoccurring funds coming in, but it's not necessarily passive, right? But that's just a term that floats around in the financial world a lot.
Right. I think that we've been lulled to sleep thinking that investments should be passive. We hand our money over and we make our money work for us. But the problem is, if that money isn't actually doing what we want it to do because it's taking on too much risk, there's too much volatility, there's too many fees, it's not creating cash flow, actually funding retirement plans can slow down our economic independence. I want people to be more active with their investments than less, meaning especially in the choice. Like if you're going to invest in real estate, be willing to say, that's not a good deal. That's not a good deal. That's, this might be a good deal. Let me investigate it further rather than just handing it over to someone saying, well, they're the expert. I'll just trust them. Now, let me be really clear about this. There are extraordinarily intelligent, smart, brilliant people on Wall Street, but a lot of those are working for themselves or working for hedge funds. And there's a lot of people that are handing their money over and it's not working hard enough for them. It's not doing enough for them. It's about accumulation, which is waiting for 30 years, compounding your interest and hoping that's going to take care of some future date. I want people to focus a lot more on how do you create cash flow. And Investor DNA would say, what category are you going to focus on? For some people, they're brilliant real estate investors. That's a good category for them. For others, it's a horrible idea. It's a train wreck. They're going to end up over leveraging and have negative cash flow and say yes to deals that weren't the right deals because they were just thinking that was going to be a good thing. Or people that get really hyped up because cryptos sound so good and Bitcoin and they get in at the wrong times and they didn't really know what they were doing. We've got to get more educated. And I think we've kind of weakened society by saying, you can never figure this out. Just trust the experts. Well, a lot of experts are salespeople, not experts.
Yeah. It's like whoever is selling us on an idea or a product, we really have to look at where are they incentivized?
Right.
And those are questions that we can all ask people. It's hard to, navigate all of this, but when you begin to ask them those questions, you might get a more clear idea on how they're incentivized. And that's going to help you understand why they're pushing a product or a service to you.
Right. Follow the money. Yeah. Look at the compensation.
Absolutely.
Look, I had to stop selling life insurance in 2005 because it was really lucrative to sell it. And if I kept selling it, I have a bias towards overfunded whole life. People have to know that if they're watching the channel and listening to everything that we're talking about, because I like security, I like stability, but I don't think that's the end all be all. It's a storage facility for your money.
Yeah.
That you could then use that cash for other things. But what you use that for depends upon who you are. Where can you create cash flow? For me, right now, I think that's private businesses. For me,
Okay. Yeah.
Private businesses are there ones out there that can support Wealth Factory and our mission and vision that we could acquire, that gives us new ability, it gives us new infrastructure, gives us better reach, it gives us a good team. That's what I'm looking for, and I have to be picky. It's been a long time since I bought a business. It's been 6 years. It's hard for me to be patient. You know me. I'm not the most patient person.
You're a quick start.
So passive income, it's a degree. It's a kind of continuum. Completely passive, I don't know a lot of that exists because a lot of times it's just money passing people by.
Yeah.
But making your investments more passive, meaning there's recurring revenue, it keeps coming in, but you still monitor it.
Yeah.
You still are responsible for the management of it, but you're not dealing with it moment to moment every single day. And rather than having an investment, you wait for 30 years to find out if it pays off, having that cash flow come along the way. So you get more active in the selection and then you get more passive in the ongoing management. That's kind of the goal here.
Yeah. And when I'm hearing you say passive doesn't mean that you're not tending to it. So I think sometimes passive for, even just in my knowledge and for other people, passive means I'm not being mindful about it. I just kind of set it and forget it, like you say sometimes. But there's more to it.
Right. And so mindful cash management versus budgeting. Budgeting is every dollar you're saying, okay, how much do I have that goes towards these types of things? How much do I have to go towards these types of things? It requires a lot of energy.
Totally.
And if someone is spending more than they make, they should go get advice from a different channel and they should figure out how to budget because you're going to be in a wreck. You're going in the wrong direction. What I'm wanting people to do is be mindful about the flow of their money and invest in themselves and look to expand what they're making, look to make more, look to increase that income and then increase their quality of life, but have an automatic percentage that's set aside. So as you make more money, it's not automatically spent. You're taking that percentage and setting it aside. And then you're just looking at the rest of the flow of your money and saying, And then economic independence is how do you create enough cash flow to cover those expenses so that it's coming from your assets, not from your direct active income.
Yeah.
And so we all have to become better investors to do that. And it means that we can't just set it and forget it, invest early, often, and always, wait for it to work out, and trust the so-called experts. We have to utilize experts to increase our own knowledge so that we can be responsible and in the driver's seat of the decisions. So we utilize experts instead of rely on them. Being overly reliant is risky. Utilizing from the right voices and the people that have, done it before, or that really, they have a niche. So there's brilliant people that teach real estate. I'm not a big stock trading guy. I just don't think it creates enough value in the world. So there's people that can teach it, but they can't teach people how to govern their emotions. And so a lot of those things get sidetracked because of the emotions. So know who you are, know how you operate. And if you're not willing to be a little bit more active, that's why I think cash flow banking at cashflowbanking.com is helpful, because sure, you're not going to get a home run with that. But if you can get 4 or 5% with safety, with some security, with a level of guarantee once it's there, that's better than speculating in things you don't know and understand. And that volatility a lot of times gives people knots in their stomach. They're like, I just worked so hard for this and it just went down in value and I don't know why. And I had nothing to do with it. And that lack of control is actually creating far too much chaos. So the good news is you don't have to know everything that there is to know about finance. You have to know a few things, but know them really well, and life gets increasingly better.
Yeah. One of the things, going back to productive expenses, when you take $1 and you invest it into yourself, whether that's a course that you're taking, a book that you're reading, being coached by someone, sometimes it's obvious that when I put $1 into this, I'm getting more than $1 back. But sometimes I think productive expenses, it feels a bit ambiguous. Like, am I really learning from this course and applying it in a way that gets me more than $1 back? Do you have any thoughts on, how to start filtering through some of these expenses that we may originally perceive as productive, and then over time they are
no longer serve you, or they
Mm-hmm.
take too long to pay off? I think there's a lot of false starts out there. People go, okay, I'm going to invest in this course, I'm going to do the work, and then they find they didn't really enjoy the work, and they find that they had other things that grabbed their interest. So I think the most important thing that we can all do is define the win up front.
Yeah.
What's our win? How's this going to work? And my good friend Rich Christensen said, and then you create your safeguards. You create your guardrails is what he calls them. He's like, you're going to zigzag towards that goal, but you want to have guardrails so you don't get too far off course and end up crashing.
Yeah.
So I would call that course corrections along the way rather than a forced correction because you didn't pay attention. And so I just look at, for me, it's really around intellectual property is my number one investment. Looking to potentially acquire businesses would be a number 2 investment, but real estate's no longer part of my portfolio, but I think there's good people that can do that. It's just not where I want to put it. It was a distraction for me. I don't invest in the stock market. I've had no money in the stock market for a very long period of time. I haven't had to deal with that volatility. I haven't had to deal with, those major losses. It's just not my investor DNA. It might be for a few people, but far too many people are doing it without the knowledge.
Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunity out there. It's just that most people don't have cash on hand when the opportunities come, because rookie investors always stay invested. Pros sit in cash and then they capitalize when the time is right. The time is going to be right. There's so much opportunity coming everyone's way because it's a chaotic economic time.
Yeah.
And that chaos provides that opportunity for those that are prepared. So get access to cash. Focus on your cash flow and your cash management. Take all your assets that aren't producing cash flow and start looking at ways you can deploy it to create cash flow. And unfortunately, most people just want a really easy answer. I hand my money over and everything works out. But that hasn't worked out for far too many people. 95% of people are not economically independent at age 65. They still had a retirement plan, but the retirement plan didn't get them where they thought they wanted to go. And with every year that it's not there, there's a year that they lost time value of money. There's
that's
less time to
devastating.
make it work out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what's really the travesty is they sacrificed to get there.
Oh, yeah.
They missed out on experiences. They worked extra time. They're doing everything they could to help themselves and their family out, but they're stuck in the wrong game, the wrong game of deferral, of delay, of sacrifice, of scrimping, of budgeting, and of saving. And we lose who they are through value creation. The number one thing you can do is learn how to create more value and add more value to the world. That's what's going to bring about more cash flow. And then you just got to make sure you learn how to create that cash flow, how to make that money. Some people give their talents away for far too long for free. And there's the book Give and Take by Adam Grant that says those people that give too much without getting anything in return end up at the bottom. You got to be the givers that also make sure that you're getting paid for what you're giving. And if you can really discover that, I think that there's an extraordinary world out there, and we've got plenty of problems, Stova, plenty of problems. And the bigger the problem that gets solved, the bigger the payoff. So where can you be part of being a problem solver rather than just pointing out problems? Where can you be part of the solution rather than just complaining? and where can you develop who you are, knowing that it's going to feel scary at times, but mistakes are part of the process. Try to make smaller mistakes rather than wait, and then the big mistake is that you never got started, that you never defined your win, you never knew what success meant to you, and you let society define it for you. So there's a lot to this. There'll be plenty more videos to talk about it, but I think the important thing here is you create your morning ritual, right? You build out mindful cash management, knowing where there's a flow to your money. You know your different types of expenses. You know how to eliminate the destructive ones. You know how to increase the productive ones. And ultimately, you look for money that's missing from your life because you're paying too much to the government or too much to a financial institution. And you really start looking at the rules of the game. And those rules are cash flow. They're discovering your investor DNA. They're looking for ways that you can create recurring revenue, and that you're watching a video like this, which means that you're interested. Make sure you become committed to one thing that will add more cash to your life today. If you do that, that's momentum. Then take that momentum, invest it back into yourself, add more value, and the world starts to become a much better place.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I think one of the most beautiful things is when a person is fully alive. So when we begin to identify what value we can or add to the world around us, we become more fully self-expressed. And when I feel like that's a beautiful thing, when you see just someone in their lane, loving what they do, enjoying it. And I agree with you. I think the world needs more people who are not putting their dreams in hibernation, but that they're fully self-expressed. And it's at that time when we can start solving the world's problems, or even just not even the world's problems, but addressing what's in our family or our local communities and contributing to the world in that way. So it's a hard process, but it's worth it in the long run.
All right, Tim. Let's dive into this. Tim Carden here with me. He's the money nerd that can go in depth on these kind of things. I always look at credit cards as kind of the easiest thing here.
Yeah.
Because when I was moving years ago, I called to cancel my cable, which included like internet, and we actually still had a landline because my wife really believes that the kids are going to need a landline one day in an emergency. So great. So we had all these kind of things. It was like 170 some bucks a month. So I called to cancel, but they moved me to the retention department, and by the end of the call, I'd saved $70 a month, even though I was still going to cancel it, because it wasn't that I was overpaying in my mind. It was just simply that I was moving and was going to get a different service in a different location. So that really kind of put a light bulb on for me, and I was like, I wonder what it would be like doing this with credit cards. So I just called the credit card company, and the first person I called really has no authority, no power to do anything. So I just said, hey, do you have any deals? Do you have any departments I could talk to about balance transfers? But the thing that really gets them is if you say you want to cancel, right? Then they move you to retention, and they immediately think you can't afford it, or that there's someone out there with a better deal. And so they're very easily going to move that interest rate down because there's no collateral against a credit card typically. So that's probably the lowest hanging fruit.
Absolutely, because they're, a lot of them, when we first get our credit cards are 20, 24%, somewhere in that range. There's a lot of room in there. And so if they think somebody's offering you a lower interest rate, better deal, they're going to move very quickly.
Any tips on what you would say?
I usually like to call them same thing, right? I've got these offers that are coming to me in the mail. Looks like a much better offer, but since for simplicity's sake, I'd like to stay with you guys if you can match or beat their offer.
That's
right?
a great one.
Yeah, and that one seems to work almost every single time.
But you got to get on the phone with the right person.
Yeah, the first person you talk to.
the first person that answers.
Yeah, they're a telemarketer. They're just, nobody gives them their authority, right? The authority is going to come from the second department, second person you talk to, for sure.
Right, you want to get in that retention
Exactly,
department.
right?
Other places where you could renegotiate loans, a Streamline Refinance. Let's say you've been paying your mortgage on time. Let's say you've got some equity inside of that, and interest rates are lower now than when you originally got the loan. So you might not have to do a full refinance. The problem with the full refinance is there's a lot of fees.
Yep.
And it's a bit of work.
It's a lot of work.
So you got to look at, with all the fees, how long before you actually break even on the better interest rate. You do a full appraisal. You have all these loans that you have to go through. But if you stay with the same company, there are times, and this isn't every time by any means, I don't know, I don't have like the stats, but it's probably like 1 in 3, 1 in 4. So it's not overly common, but it's worth the phone call.
Exactly.
Now, we've had crazy situations happen when people have made these phone calls.
Absolutely.
My buddy Kevin, he called to do this, and the second mortgage company was the same company as the first mortgage. They offered him a deal that if he paid 10 cents on the dollar, they would wipe out the second mortgage. This wasn't a loan modification. It was simply a company that was in need of cash and in trouble and knew that they didn't have very good collateral because the market had gone down at that time.
Yeah, and we'll see that a lot. And it'll change how often they'll do streamlined refinances with market conditions, right?
Right.
Banks will loosen things up and tighten things up accordingly when they have to. And so never hurts to make the phone call, because now we're talking like a third to a tenth of the cost to get the loan done. The process is like a week to
Right.
get a loan
A
modification
few
or
pages
streamlined.
instead of
Absolutely.
you know,
So
killing a
absolutely.
tree. So what is the language you would use there? And is the word streamline something that they're common and familiar with, or is that something that I just know this technical term?
Streamline refinance is a common industry term. They should know exactly what you're talking about. And once again, kind of the same strategy with the credit card company. They know, I mean, if we're driving up the freeway here in I-15, how many billboards are there that just say, if your mortgage is above this percent, refinance now, right? So they know we're getting hit with lower
Right.
rates and better terms constantly.
Right.
And so they don't want to lose that business either.
Right. So streamline refinance would be on a mortgage, negotiating better interest rates on a credit card. What other kind of loans, like, is there anything you can do on a student loan?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different places you can not necessarily renegotiate. It's usually a refinance.
Yeah.
They are very stringent. I haven't had anyone actually lower an interest rate for me, or anyone for a client, anything like that on a student loan. They don't really renegotiate very well with student loans.
Right.
But it usually comes down to a refinance on a student loan in order to prove that position.
Now, I've seen loan modifications where someone is far behind on their payments.
Yes.
There's not much equity in the property. They've had some type of hardship. This isn't usually an easy process either.
No.
There's a process of proving it out. There's a process of being late on your payment. It's already hit your credit score, so it's not going to work every time. But loan modifications could be lowering the payment on a mortgage, for example.
Absolutely. Like the HARP program is one of the most common, the most recent iteration of that with the housing collapse that happened. And they allowed people that really were behind, really had some hard case situations to renegotiate the loan right in the middle of the stream. But you had to turn in full financial packages, all kinds of stuff. It was just almost as hard as doing a full refinance would have been.
Right.
But for those that needed it, it worked out. We found about a third of the people that applied for HARP actually got a HARP modification.
Now, have you seen, because I've seen where people like want the fees up front, they're like a private company that help with loan modification. How many times does a loan modification happen versus not happen? And is it worth paying the money up front? And do you have to pay it up front?
No, I wouldn't really pay them up front. Same thing with credit repair. If somebody says, just pay me up front and then I'll go get the work done, a lot of times the work doesn't follow the payment. And they might make a real true effort at it, but you're paying for something that you're not necessarily getting. So I don't really like the pay up front unless there's some sort of written guarantee that they'll take care of that for you and it'll happen.
Okay. So other places and other loans that you can see where we can negotiate better interest rates?
You know, I've seen us negotiate interest rates on pretty much every type of loan. It just depends, except for the student loans. That's the
Right.
one that's been the least successful.
Your financial circumstance and situation is a big part of that, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely.
And what your financial reporting is, or if you had a certain hardship.
Yep.
So really maybe what we pivot to is just refinancing in general.
Yeah, and using a refinance for a modification too, or,
Right.
or a renegotiation. So that's happened very successfully, where the current company says, nope, we can't bend, no exception, no anything. So we actually get an offer sheet for a refinance and say, well, they're going to offer me this. And then all of a sudden the bank's like, oh, well, never mind, we can help you out.
Well, here's where refinance can make a lot of sense. Let's say you have a paid off car. You could refinance that car and pay off a higher interest rate loan, like a credit card or a line of credit or a business loan. Because a lot of times car loans can be like 1.9, 2.9, really low interest rates because there's the car's collateral. And if you can refinance a car, not a lot of people think about that, right? We think about refinancing a home.
Yeah.
But that's just a more preferred loan. And by the way, that loan is an installment loan that if you pay it on time actually helps and boosts your credit score.
Absolutely. So that's a great thing to do if you got high interest rate credit cards and other things. Just refinance a car at a much lower rate. You just saved 18% in interest cost. And
one that I'm hesitant to mention, but it's important, I think that you have to be the right type of saver, you have to have the right infrastructure, but you could refinance a home, which is potentially tax deductible on that interest, and typically really low, and you can lengthen the loan so you can keep your payment down low, and you could refinance anything from cars to credit cards, or if you have enough equity, you could just gobble your whole student loan up inside of there. And now all of a sudden, you've got a better payment structure. But the problem with this is if you just go back and get big loans because you go get a motorcycle, go get another car, go get a boat, and all of a sudden you're financing these things with the freed up payment, that didn't really help out in building wealth and moving you along in life. But if you take that savings and you just set up a separate account, and you automatically save that difference into that account. So you start building up that liquidity, which gives you staying power. Build up that liquidity, which allows you to handle and navigate different turbulent times within your life. I think that that's where it becomes especially valuable.
It's really valuable, if, like you said, if they've got the discipline to pretend like they're still making the old payment, but they're going to make it to themselves now, so Parkinson's law doesn't steal the wealth from them.
Right, and Parkinson's law is if you have an increase in income, expenses rise to meet or exceed that increase within 3 to 6 months. Now that's my rendition of how I'd say it. I know you know the history behind Parkinson's law and maybe a more accurate definition.
Yeah, so C. Northcote Parkinson did a study of the English Navy. He gave 2 different groups a job to do and a time frame to do the job in. 2 different time frames, same job. They both took the exact amount of time. And that was his first iteration. The second iteration had to do with the size of government agencies and corporations that they would add to payroll by a certain percentage every single year, regardless of need or growth. Once they received a critical mass, is what he called it. He almost got killed for that one because a bunch of people got laid off when those reports hit, and so he got a lot of death threats. And then he brought it into personal finance, and your definition was very accurate. It was basically what you said: increase or excess of cash flow. If there's not a purpose designated for it, your expenses will rise to meet or exceed it.
Right, this is part of why you'd see this economic catalyst type programs where they might say, oh, you're going to get a refund, a tax rebate, tax refund. It's not the problem that people are getting a refund and that's really creating the spur in the economy. It's that with Parkinson's law, people spend that 2, 3, 3.5 times over because like, oh, I'll do that because the refund's coming in. But then they'll categorize that, put it aside, oh, I'll do this because the refund's coming in, and they spend more than they actually have. So Parkinson's law is one of the scary things if you're going to go refinance something, free up cash, and then not have a plan or a strategy with that freed up cash. So look, people that are a train wreck, people that absolutely spend more than they make, paying extra to a loan, shortening loans might be the very best thing they do, with the caveat that that could put them at risk of default if they're spending more than they make, right? Because what kind of frustrates me and concerns me at the same time is that people used to get car loans. They might be 36 months and maybe 48 months, maybe 60 months, maybe that 5-year loan. Now it's like 84 months.
84 months.
People are just getting long because now they can buy more vehicle even though they can't truly afford it. We become a payment-based society versus a purchase on price-based society. And I want you to be really calculated and careful when you go about refinancing. So first, see if you can renegotiate. Can you get your existing interest rates lower, right? Streamline Refinance, which isn't a full refinance, or negotiating a better interest rate with an existing loan because you have comparative or competitive deals. That could be very useful. And then just refinancing a home could be good, refinancing a car, or looking at any type of loan where you're paying a lower interest rate with the new loan versus the old loan, so that with the same payment, you're either shaving that time off or you freed up cash to build up your savings, your liquidity, invest it back into yourself. We're really looking at how can this personal finance be personal to you, giving you enough information that you can be informed and make the right choices and decisions.
Absolutely, and if they've got that discipline, if you have the discipline to really do the refinance, free up the cash flow, and then use that cash flow for savings and growth, that can be a very, very valuable tool. We've used that with great success for many, many people.
Have you been working hard, saving money, doing what you've been taught to do to have a better life, but now you're trying to pay off debt and put money in retirement and working hard and getting an education and just not sure this is going to get you where you want to go? Are you concerned about the economy and watched way too many pensions disappear for others? Or you're just kind of tired at this point? Today on Ask the Money Nerds, we have a question from someone who's trying to do things different, who wants to know if there's such a thing as to invest passively in a business or other vehicle in order to generate cash flow and still minimize taxes. Chief of Staff Stolba, how was that intro? Did I do okay?
I think you did very well.
Like, we got all sorts of Wealth Labs cups here today.
Yeah, we got a lot of passion in the room, a lot of energy.
This you thought was tea, and I just started chugging it, and you're like, what?
I was like, wow,
It's one of
your
those
palate can
BAI
handle
drinks,
a lot of...
BAI drinks. They're probably not
yeah.
good for me, but I drink them anyway.
They do. I love
today.
the watermelon one. Those are so good.
I've been off of caffeine. I'm only doing coffee every 3 days.
That's,
Sad
pretty
life.
impressive for you.
Especially since I'm an amateur barista.
You usually make
Emphasizing
lattes every
amateur.
morning.
I offered you a latte, but made you tea instead.
Yes.
Yep.
Take the tea.
All right, what we got going
We got
today?
Mark's question today.
I like Mark.
Yeah. Mark says, it's a really great question that a lot of people are going to relate to. And I think, like you said in the intro, there's a lot of people in my generation, our generation, who watched our parents work really hard for a company.
What's your generation?
Generation awesome.
Generation
I'm in
nerd.
between. I'm in between.
What's in between?
I'm not
You're
a
an
millennial,
Xer, aren't you?
I'm not Aaron.
You're not millennial.
No, I'm not a millennial, but I'm just like right on the edge. I'm in
Okay.
between the two, you know.
That explains some of your behavior.
Uh-oh.
All right.
Okay. But anyway, so my generation, like we did see our parents and people work for jobs for a really long time and it didn't work out for them. And so there's a lot of us who are wondering, like, I don't want to be in the same boat where I dedicate myself to a job forever and it not pan out like I hoped. So I think Mark's question hints at that.
All right.
Okay.
Did you ask it yet? Did I miss something?
No, I haven't asked
I'm
it
waiting.
yet. Here we go. He says, I'm turning 38 and I'm a registered nurse. I have about $200,000 in a 403B, a 457 Roth IRA, stocks, and cash. I bought a house on a VA loan for 2.25%, 30-year fixed. I am what I aimed for, middle class. Work hard, get debt-free, save, and invest. A major upgrade from my previous generation, but I want to level up. I know working through my 60s, waiting for a pension, and watching money I can't touch is considered safe, but based on what I'm hearing now, there is a good chance none of that could be there in the end. I have been poor and middle class, but I want to be financially independent. I hear you guys say build cash flow and minimize taxes. I'll read and listen to the advice you offer to get financially independent. I have many, but I'll just start with one question on passive investing, and here it is. Is there such a thing as a way to invest passively in a business or an other vehicle in order to generate cash flow and minimize taxes?
All right. So first, I want to say now is the best time ever to have people question everything and start creating a game worth winning. Not the game that well-intentioned preachers, teachers, family, and friends want us to play.
Right.
Not the container society created for us. You know that. More, bigger, better, faster, work harder, delay, defer. But really get clear about what do we want? Like, that's what it's time to ask. Like, what do we really want? And when those wants coincide or collide with value creation, creating a vision bigger than our problems, discovering our hidden capital, which is our mental capital, our ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insights, and our relationship capital, people, networks, organizations, mentors, family, and friends. And then when we come from a place that we actually are trying to help with a loving place, like that's going to unlock a lot for Mark because he's got, obviously he's a nurse. They're helping out tremendously. He's saying, I want to do more than just save and save. So a lot of it has to be like changing the game that we're playing. Because the game that he was talking about to begin with was this game of like a mix between play not to lose, like, okay, I just got to get out of debt. That's playing not to lose, right? Like, I don't want to have debt. That's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. And play to win. I got to work hard so that one day, someday I can enjoy life. And unfortunately, we give our life away to that. There's so much of our life and so much of our energy and so much of our worry and so much of our frustration wrapped in that. So much of our identity wrapped in how much money do we have? How much debt do we have? What kind of cool experiences? What kind of stuff do we buy? And this just gets bombarded through consumerism. And so I think the first thing is, what do you want? Is a question that we have to ask on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And what do we have to give is the next question. And how can we bring those together so that we become the value creators we were born to be?
Yeah, this is a great time to reimagine what we want our lives to look like, both now and 5 or 10, 30 years from now. In some ways, we have the space to do that. Things are being turned upside down and they might not look the way that they always have been. So it's a great time to reimagine, get creative, and like really hone in on what is it that I want my life to look like.
Right. So he asked questions of passive income.
And when people say that, what do you think they really mean? Because I don't know if many people are like, I just want it coming my way and do nothing with it.
What they mean is like recurring revenue, money that comes in every month, not just one time. So there's accumulation, which is eventually I'll have this nest egg that I can start living off of. That's accumulation. That's deferral. That's retirement planning. Where cash flow is, I want to have an asset that can kick off cash, not once, but ongoing. Like I can see that coming in regularly. And that's recurring revenue or cash flow, right? That's a beautiful focus. That's a little bit more difficult to do than just set money aside and forget it or invest early, often, and always. All these kind of sayings that I use because it's about a little bit more intentional and being more deliberate up front, having a little patience to look at what the right deals are and being willing to say no to things that aren't quite good enough and being willing to sit and not earn for a little bit of while until you find the right thing. Like, it's hard for me to do that. You know me. How patient do you think of me as, right?
You're a quick start.
You know, it's not like patience isn't the number one thing for me, but in this book, 5-Day Weekend, that I co-authored, we have this pretty cool thing called the passive income score sheet. So this score sheet helps you determine how active or how passive any business venture or investment is, right? So you can analyze the passive potential of any opportunity by rating these following factors, and you rate them 0 through 5, right? Like, or maybe 1 is really low and 5 is really high potential. So will there be income soon? That's a 5. Or will it take longer? That's a 1, right? And then regular cash flow, will it be predictable or sporadic, right? So 5 if it's predictable, 1 if it's sporadic, or anything in between. Will the income continue for a long time, right? 5, or a limited time would be a 1. Increasing cash flow, can the income increase over time? So maybe if you have renters, the rents go up over time. As you have a business and you improve it, do you increase your cash flow over time? Yeah. And then the next thing is question 5, your personal time to manage. You know, how many hours per month of your time? None. That's a 5. That's maybe you have it fully delegated. You have an infrastructure, you have a team, but you probably had to do work to get that in place.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's going to require a ton of your time. That's not very passive, even if it's recurring. And then on-site management. Do you need to be there? Do you need to be on site, or could you be traveling and still have this occurring? So you want to kind of score this, and then, you know, any score lower than a 10 needs to be restructured, or you need to figure out a way to increase the cash flow or eliminate it altogether. 10 to 20, modify it to maximize it, and anything above 25 is actually a great passive income. It's a passive income index. It's not meaning that everything is passive. Like, something for nothing is problematic.
Right.
If you don't monitor and maintain through management, that's good. You like that alliteration?
Yeah,
then,
you're good at those.
Then it's just not gonna be sustainable. So I think that we've been sold this bill of goods of like, oh, I can hand my money over to this guy that does options trading, and that's going to provide cash flow. Or, yeah, you can get utility stocks, but how much cash flow does that really provide? Or, you know, real estate's going to be really passive. I got to tell you, it wasn't passive for me. Deferred maintenance, you know, going and getting the loans, putting them in LLCs, dealing with renter turnover, dealing with someone that stole our copper once, dealing with someone that slipped and hurt their hip. Like, we've really got to determine what we're going to spend our time on. But if we just hand our money over, it's probably not going to be that passive. So what is it that you're going to invest in? It's going to require learning about that. If you're going to acquire a business, how much do you know about that business? But we've got Tim, who's one of our money nerds, acquired a business, is doing so well with that business.
Yeah.
He had his brother buy a business. His brother's doing so well with that business. And there's 418,000 of these things coming up for sale in next year. And I think as the economy tightens up and gets tougher and they stop flooding it with a bunch of money, you're going to see even better deals. People that need out because they're exhausted or their time has come, and you might be able to buy into that, but you're going to have to learn about business, at least some of the basics, or bring a team member along that knows that so they can help you identify it. So to have more passive income, you actually have to be more active up front.
Yeah.
It requires more action up front.
Now, if someone is just starting off trying to learn about being a business owner, where's a good place to start? You know, if you said you have to have some basic level business acumen to get started, right?
Well, we should do a video with Rich Christensen.
Yeah, that would
Rich
be great.
Christensen has a book called Bootstrap Business. That is an amazing book, produced by Wizard Press, an amazing book on starting a business with no money, right? That's a beautiful book. Or his other book, Zigzag Principle.
Yeah.
Great books, whether you're a seasoned business owner or you're just starting one. Now, if you're looking to buy a business, Walker Dybel, which I just interviewed him twice.
Yeah.
His Buy Then Build book is great for someone looking to buy a business. Look, we learned math in school, and for some people, that's extraordinarily tough. We learned science in school. Like, business is not more complicated than that when you're reading about it, learning about it, or understanding the basics.
Yeah.
The reason business becomes complicated is because of emotion. Because now money's involved and it's heightened fear, or you're dealing with people that have different personalities or life or economies. And so I'm not here to say that business is just smooth sailing. It's a series of mistakes that we learn from and hopefully continue to improve and course correct and can profit from. But it's less risky for people to buy an existing business with infrastructure that is profitable than it is to go out and start something from scratch. And it's easier to do that than just hope that your stock market's going to work for you, because those companies, we don't know what's going on in their boardroom. We don't know what's going on, you know, with their short-term reporting versus where they're really going long-term and what industry changes are, because, you know, 96% of businesses do less than $1 million of revenue. So they can be as affordable as a down payment on a home. But don't think that means that you don't have to do any work once you acquire it.
Yeah.
The less attention, the less cash flow, more than likely. And if you have uniqueness that you can bring to that, because it's like, I wouldn't go buy just any business, but I'd buy a digital business that supported Wealth Factory, or something that would help me elevate my brand so that we could actually reach more people to give them this message of empowerment and building a life that they love and navigating this financial world without feeling wrong or bad or sad or angry or defeated like so many people want people to feel. So it really has to be aligned with who you are, right? But there's great books. Traction is an amazing book. Scaling Up is an amazing book. Those are a little bit like, there's some advanced stuff in there. It might feel overwhelming. That's why I gave some of these other book recommendations. And we just got to reach out to Rich, get him up here and get him on for those people that want to start a business, which can start as a side hustle, because his zigzag principle is really great. And, you know, Brandon Allen that works with us, he's got amazing resources with New York Revolution that really help people out with getting started with business. So it's simply, if you have the time to go get mentored by someone, to offer them something that you can learn from them by offering your time so that can help you out. I know people that go work for a business and they're the ones that acquire that business because they know that business is going to be sold sometime in the future. So there are ways to make this happen.
Definitely. Let's see if there's anything else. Are you willing to invest in yourself and your future and take responsibility for future prosperity?
That's what it comes down to. Handing money over. We're not taking a lot of responsibility. We put blame somewhere else. Buying a business, buying some real estate, that takes personal responsibility. And so I really feel like my book, Budgeting Sucks, is an amazing resource for this, right? Because in Budgeting Sucks, there are some components, especially when Win Then Play comes out or the 4 Wins, we have entire sections on business that you saw the advanced reader group was really pro the business segment. So we have this thing called Cycle of Creation, which is how you start with an idea and profit up front before spending too much time or borrowing any money. And so those are, there's some great resources coming people's way that the Win Then Play playbook as well. But I think Budgeting Sucks gets some of the foundational pieces to get you on the right footing financially so that you can capitalize on those opportunities and think a little bit differently and focus on cash flow and consider recurring revenue. It's not all the answers with business, but we're going to continue to come out with podcasts, and follow the link at the end of this one, and it's going to set you right where you need to be if business is the answer for you. So any final sentiments or thoughts?
No, I just think it's great that Mark reached out on his journey of up-leveling his life, and it sounds like he's taking personal responsibility, which, there's a lot of rub with that. People want things for free, but we really have to own our lives. We have to make our decisions for ourselves and be the creators of what we want during our time here. We're going to dive into Addie's question. This one's a little bit lengthy, but it's going to give you some background information. Okay. Addie says, I'm paying in cash for an advanced degree on a monthly basis, approximately $1,000 per month. The remaining balance is $8,000 over the next 10 months. I can continue paying the tuition monthly with no interest, or take an $8,000 loan, which is approximately 5% interest, from my Mass Mutual whole life policy to pay the tuition in full and pay back the policy over an extended period of 2 to 3 years. Paying the policy back over the extended period allows me to save approximately $600 to $700 per month over the next 10 months, which can be saved for future insurance premiums or other potential investments. My current financial situation allows me to take either route. I'm looking to make the most efficient decision using the cash flow banking Wealth Factory perspective. Thank you for your insights. So what would you tell Addie to do?
Okay, so first let's talk about what whole life is and this whole cash flow banking notion. So cash flow banking means when we take a whole life policy, it's overfunded. Overfunded means there's PUAs, paid up additions. So that's above and beyond the minimum base premium that's required for the death benefit. And so that goes in mostly commission free or drastically reduced from the commissions that you might face with the base premium. So you're going to see a lot more cash come in, and it can grow that cash and actually push that death benefit up.
Okay.
So when you're overfunding that and the cash value grows quicker, you have a couple options. One, you could take a withdrawal from the policy. When you take a withdrawal, though, they give it back to you as in the way that you put your premium in. So they give you back your dollars first, so there's no tax on that until you've taken all the money back that you put in, and then they start taxing you on your interest.
Okay.
It's called FIFO, first in, first out.
Okay, we're diving in deep today, right away.
Most of the plans are the opposite. It's like you put money in, and the first dollars you get back is LIFO. Means it's your interest first, so it's taxable first, and you don't get to the tax-free stuff till you've gotten all the way back to your principal.
Okay.
The second thing is you could borrow. So when you borrow, they leave the money in your policy as collateral, and it earns interest. And then they use that collateral, give you a loan from the company, in this case, Mass Mutual, and then you pay interest. But it doesn't impact your credit. You choose the payback period. If you don't pay it back by the time you die, they subtract the outstanding loan from the death benefit.
Okay.
Tax-free. Okay. So I'm a cash flow guy, but we can look at the tools like the cash flow index. What's the loan balance divided by a minimum monthly payment? And that can tell us, hey, this is a pretty poor cash flow index on this, interest-free loan. So even though there's no interest, $600 to $700 a month of cash flow for someone getting an advanced degree could make a big difference. And that $600 to $700 a month could be invested, right? It could be simply set aside to build up even more liquidity. It could be,
having the 6 months of savings.
Right. I like the thought of that cash flow. So the question becomes, what could you do with that cash flow? And where could you allocate that? Could you get a return on that? Already investing in themselves, right? Investing in this advanced degree, and obviously skill sets there. So good things there. But if it's me, I'm likely just to, use the cash value, pay this thing off. Even though I'm being charged 5% interest, I'm still earning 5% interest, and I could just pay that back on my own accord. So, 2 to 3 years, like mentioned in the question, or quicker than that. Just kind of depends.
Okay. So when she talks about having 5% interest on an $8,000 loan, what are your thoughts on that interest rate?
That's a good interest rate overall. I mean, I feel like anytime you're at 5% or less, you're in a pretty good interest rate realm. Sure, there's car loans at 1.9 or 2.9. And yeah, there's all these promotional things that might say 0%, but a lot of times there's financing costs up front. Like anytime you get a loan and it says you get 0% interest or $3,000 cash back, if you take 0% interest, it cost you $3,000. That was an upfront interest cost. So it's kind of a marketing tactic more than it is a real savings. It cost you $3,000. So it's just like you prepaid your interest is what you did. Right.
That's tricky. Okay. So you would advise her to take the $600 to $700 a month if she has a good place to invest it. Right.
Yeah. And it could be paying back the loan on the cash value. It could be, setting up another policy. It could be, it could be, purchasing things that increase our financial IQ. As long as, obviously, with this level of question, this is someone who's dialed in, fairly disciplined, so I'm not too concerned, right? Some people might do that and they go below the $600 to $700 and they have nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
I do not get that from this type of a question. I'm impressed.
Yeah. This person seems pretty thoughtful in their approach. So just in this situation, why is this the best direction? Like if she chose the way that you just advised, why is that the best route for her?
I like it because, she's got control over her money. She's got multiple options, neither one being a bad option. But I'm in the world of how do you improve your cash flow? Because if you're looking at economic independence, that's enough recurring revenue to cover your basic expenses, right? So that recurring revenue, if you get $600 to $700 more that you have to earn to break even, that lowers the bar. You're in a better situation. If there's a cash crunch, if there's a financial issue, if there's anything that happens, you don't have as much of a hurdle every single month. So I like to lower that hurdle. Have that $600 to $700 a month available to grow assets, to create cash flow with assets.
Okay. So now what if someone doesn't have a whole life policy? After listening, they're intrigued and they want to open up their own whole life policy. Where do they go? And what's a good amount to start with?
freewwrd.com is What Would the Rockefellers Do, which is my book that will really let them know how to design it properly, how it works, what the benefits are, why this is different than what you might hear from other financial people out there, why 80% of them are inefficient and not designed well, so that they deserve their bad reputation, but how to do it properly. And if you want to schedule an appointment or look at securing one, you can go to cashflowbanking.com. So those are the two resources, freewwrd.com or cashflowbanking.com. And I think it'll put people in the right direction.
Okay.
Want to master your money? Want to figure out the things that you could do to improve your finances? Click here and check out more videos like this on Money Matters.